What up, though? What's happening? I'm Ross. I want to talk to you in a way about the Americans' feelings in these times, right? We're being told by the government that everything is okay. And, to be fair, the stock market seems to be up. I don't understand why. I would have thought for sure by now that we should have a correction, but we don't. The unemployment rate is pretty low if you're believing the unemployment rate or you believe the numbers that the government put out. So to those people's credit that we're not in a recession technically, but there are a lot of Americans that feel that way. I personally am not hurting financially, but I feel like the fundamentals aren't there. We should have had a correction by now, but I've been wrong for all of 2023. I was waiting for the stock market to correct. It did not. And now here in 2024, it's starting to hit new record highs. So, I was wrong. But I do want to get into an article that I found from Yahoo Finance. It says most people, or at least half of Americans, are saying that their personal finances have gotten worse. It's all relative. Again, some of the historic markers aren't showing it. The GDP, the stocks, the unemployment rate aren't showing a recession. But I hear more and more people talking about hurting. People talking about the prices of everything so high. The inflation is unbearable for so many. So there's just it seems like there's a disconnect somewhere. But let's get into this article. I've got it here. It is from Yahoo Finance. Half of Americans say their personal finances have gotten worse since 2020. Is relief on the way in 2024? No, no. Let me answer that right now. No. If you don't change what you were doing in 2023, nothing's going to change in 2024. If you think the government or somebody's coming to save you, that's not going to happen. That's for sure. I think the government is doing everything they can to not admit that the economy, that there are a lot of Americans hurting. Yes, that's true. But every administration will do that. But nobody's coming to save you. If that's what you think. Nobody's coming. But let's get into this article. Raquel Alfaro graduated from college in 2019 with big expectations. She'd quickly get a job related to her journalism degree. Okay. I know Americans are hurting, but first problem right there is a journalism degree. Those don't pay a whole lot, and they're not in high demand. I'm just going to point that out before I go on with the story. I know that has nothing to do with the story, but she got a journalism degree. I'm going to guess that she has more student loans too. I haven't read the story yet, but let's get into it. Let's go forward. She'd get a job related to a journalism degree, buy a house, and be financially independent. That's another thing. It just doesn't work that way. You're not going to be able to come out of school, get this high paying job, and then all of a sudden you're in a position to buy a house. Like it didn't even work that way 20, 30, 40 years ago. It surely is not working that way today with everything being off the chains expensive. Homes are not affordable by any means. So she hadn't expected to be routinely ghosted by recruiters, struggle with her mental health, or lose her first post grad job during COVID. Yeah, and that sucks that she came out right during COVID, so she probably got laid off. And journalism is still hurting. Sports Illustrated, Time, they're all laying people off. Sports Illustrated, I think, collapsed. I think they're out of business, or at least they laid all their staff off. So there is, and it has been a bloodbath in journalism or media, at least big media, for a few years now. So now, 26, Alfaro lives with her family in Maryland, working as a customer affairs specialist and taking side jobs, walking dogs. Between her car payment and gas for her half an hour commute, groceries, debt repayment, and other expenses, she can't afford to get an apartment in the area, where a one-bedroom apartment is the cost of an entire paycheck. Wow. Holy cow. It's not the future she had in mind for herself. At 26, I thought I'd be more financially stable. That's the narrative people want to put out there. Alfaro says, right now, I don't feel like that. I still feel like I'm figuring out my life and figuring out my financial situation. Listen, but to her credit, at 26, you probably don't have everything figured out. I didn't have anything figured out at 26. Now, at 26, I was, what was I? I was in the Marine Corps at 26. So kind of I had, a schedule of what was laid out. It was pretty much expected of me what to do. But as far as financially, I wasn't getting paid a whole lot. The only reason I was independent is because the Marine Corps was giving me a place to stay, right? So I don't think you don't necessarily have to have everything figured out by 26, and I don't think you should feel bad about yourself if you don't have it figured out by 26. Alfaro is one of millions of Americans who feel their personal financial situation has gotten worse since 2020. After inflation, high interest rate, and unattainable housing prices and other economic factors, 50% of U.S. adults say their overall financial situation is worse than it was November 2020, according to October 23 bank rate polling. Right. And I understand, and that's amazing to me is November 2020. yeah, that was we were still in the midst of COVID at that point in time, but I think people feel better because the government printed out all this money and pushed it all into the economy. And now we're dealing with those consequences. So I think for during COVID, people got an extra sense of I've got money, and people acted like, people took out loans that they shouldn't have took out. People got money and they were able to, do things that they hadn't done before. So, but when that money has dried up and when inflation has now, the prices have gone up according to that money that was sent out. Now it's painful. It's painful. As 2024 presidential election approaches, 89% of Americans say the economy will be very important or somewhat important in their vote. And that doesn't bode well for old Joe Biden, because if half of the people feel like their finances have gotten worse since 2020, it's not good. Despite months of recession fears, and nationwide metrics now show the U.S. economy is actually growing. However, while wages are strong and unemployment is low, many Americans still inflation is too high to comfortably afford necessities. And see, this is, to me, is part of the disconnect here. We keep seeing these official numbers and everything's good and unemployment is low, but I keep seeing video after video of layoffs. I keep seeing people, TikTok after TikTok, and that's a young crowd that is supposed to be, on the Democrat and Joe Biden side, and they are really loud and vocal about how expensive things are, how hard it is to survive, the unaffordability of everything. So, but then you've got the other side of things where people, there's a lot of people that are doing well. So I think there is just a widening chasm between those people that have and those people that have not. So if you have a skill right now, you're in high demand, especially if you're a blue collar person. If you're blue collar, you're probably making bank. You're a welder, an electrician, a carpenter, you're making bank. So to you, economy is pretty good right now. So I can see where somebody with a journalism degree, it's going to be tough. And she's not the only one. I don't want to pick on her, but it is what it is, right? The U.S. isn't in a recession, but many Americans feel like it is. 59% of U.S. adults feel like the economy is in a recession, with 31% strongly agreeing as of October 2023. Americans are more likely to say the economy has impacted their finances if they feel there's a recession. 66% of Americans say the economic environment has negatively impacted their finances as of October 2023. That figure rises to 85% for Americans who believe the economy is in a recession. Well, that makes sense, right? You can't correlate which one goes first, but if your finances are severely impacted, you're going to think the economy is in a recession. So it makes sense that those two would go hand in hand, right? Cost of living is a significant pain point for most Americans. Yeah, it's just like I said, 69% of Americans say their cost of living has gotten worse between November 2020 and October 2023. According to a separate report, 42% say their short-term savings have gotten worse. 34% say their investments, 34% including retirement savings, have gotten worse, and 18% say their careers have gotten worse. Right, so that's a lot of negativity in these polls out here, right? The short-term savings have gotten worse, right? Everything's so expensive and it shot up so quickly. And here's part of the problem that a lot of people won't want to admit. It's because all of that money was printed and given away. And I know everybody thinks, oh, we had to do it. It was COVID. We were all shut down. But this is the consequence. You can't have the good without the bad. So I'm sure when the money was getting pushed out, everybody was feeling good. Everybody was feeling flush. Now that we're paying the consequences and the prices have commiserately gone up in equality with the money that was given out, right? Now it's hurting. Well, yeah. I'm not saying that the COVID payments were right or wrong. All I'm saying is when you push that much money into the economy, there's going to be consequences, and we're dealing with those consequences now, whether you believed in that move or not. Nearly a quarter, that's 25%, don't have emergency savings. Only 48% of Americans have enough emergency savings to cover at least 3 months worth of expenses. And honestly, to me, that's a good note. 48% of Americans have enough to cover at least 3 months worth of expenses. I would think that would be lower than that, but 48% is almost half. It should be better, but honestly, I would think it would be lower than 48%. As of May 2023, 22% have no emergency savings at all. Wow. That must be a scary situation to be in. But I guess if you're used to living in that situation, you're used to living on the edge. People get used to it, right? People get used to living on the edge, and they make do with what they can. So Americans' debt is piling up. 36% of U.S. adults have more credit card debt than emergency savings as of January 2023. So almost a third, out of every 3 adults that you look at, one of them has more credit card debt than emergency savings. Wow. And a lot of people make this mistake of using their credit card during emergency. That is the last time you want to be using your credit card, is during an emergency. You're going to have to pay all that stuff back. So some people shouldn't even have credit cards, to be quite honest. Concerns over job security add additional financial stress. 33% of American workers were worried about their job security as of April 2023. Yeah, so not only are prices going up and you're struggling to make ends meet, but you're also worried about your job. Another pain point they point to, or another evidence of the pain, the consumer confidence, a metric tracked by the University of Michigan that indexes consumer attitudes and expectations about the economy, is down 11 percentage points, 80.7 to 69.7 between December 2020 and December 2023, the latest month available. The index soared to 78.8 in the first preliminary results of January 2024, the highest it's been since July 2021, according to the University of Michigan. But consumer confidence still hasn't caught up to 2020, even though that was the first year of COVID-19. So it looks like according to this index, at least there's some preliminary thoughts of things being good this month in January, but this month is we're still in January. So it's a good article. It's a long article. I don't want to read the whole thing. I suggest you go and look at it. There's a lot more data in there. But most of the data says the same thing, that since 2020 or around about, since pre-COVID or during COVID, the consumer confidence is down, and it's obvious why. Everything is more expensive. So if you were making a certain amount, right, you got the COVID payouts and all that. So that probably helped you along. And then after COVID, when you're still making that same amount or just a little bit more, you find out prices have skyrocketed even higher than the little raise you probably did manage to get. So not to mention, companies are laying people off. So some people don't even have the job that they started with. So I can see why there's a lot of people that are feeling pessimistic about the economy. The official numbers don't reflect it, but that's where we're at. So what do you think? Somebody tell me in the comments. Do you think we're doing good? Do you think we're in for a recession? Are the official numbers right, or is these surveys more correct? If you made it this far, consider mashing the like. If this isn't your first video of me, consider mashing the subscribe. My name is Ross. Peace.